Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with allthingsbbq.com, and this is Lobster Mac and Cheese. Well, today we're making everyone's favorite side dish, mac and cheese, and we're taking it up a notch with some grilled lobster. Let's get it. Well, today we're cooking on the Napoleon Prestige 500. We're gonna start off on the side burner. We need to cook off our pasta. All right, so we brought our water to a boil. Gonna add a little bit of salt. And then we're gonna add our cavatappi pasta. Now I know I said mac and cheese, we're actually making cavatappi and cheese just because I really like this noodle. I love all the ridges in it, all the curls. I feel like it really soaks up all of that cheesy goodness. It's not really all that important. You can use whatever noodle you like. What we're gonna do now is bring this thing up to a boil, let it simmer for about 8 minutes until it's just tender. So we've got this pasta just tender. We don't want it too soft because it's gonna go bake on the grill here in a little bit. So at this point, I'm just gonna strain this off. We'll be right back. All right, so we're gonna put our 12 ounces of pasta back into the pot for now and just hit it with a little bit of olive oil to make sure it doesn't all stick together. Just to coat the surfaces there. We can set a lid on this and we'll just put it aside. So now we're gonna get into our lobster. We're using lobster tails today, and we're actually gonna get the meat out of the shell here and just direct grill it. We want to do this to get as much texture on the lobster meat as possible. So I'm going to cut straight down the middle of these tails. And then we're just going to work that meat right out of the shell. Come out fairly easy. Just work your fingers in between the flesh and the shell, pull those right out. And now we've got all of this surface area exposed so that we can get some nice texture on the outside as well as a little bit of seasoning. Now for the seasoning, we're just gonna hit this again with a little bit of oil just to act as a binder, but we're gonna use a fairly general seasoning. So we're using all-purpose seasoning, the Cattleman's Grill Trail Dust, just great savory flavors. Almost like an all-purpose seasoning salt, some garlic, some salt, some onion, some interesting notes in there as well. We don't need to go crazy with the seasonings. It's a small piece of meat, so just a little bit on the surface. Now we're gonna do our grilling here on the infrared side burner on the Napoleon, but I wanna pop this up a level so we're not too close to that intense heat. And what we're looking to do is just get some nice color and texture formed on the outside of these lobster tails. So we're just gonna turn these to brown them evenly. And just like with any piece of protein, if it's sticking to the surface, it's not ready to be flipped yet. But once it's released, then you're good to go ahead and turn it. All right, so now we're getting some great color and texture on the outside of these. I'm not too terribly worried about if they're fully cooked yet. They're going to be at this intense heat. But what we can kind of do to ensure that once we've got the color we like, just gonna go ahead and throw these in a bowl. And we'll put a plate on top of them, and that'll kind of trap all that heat in there. So any cooking that we need to make up for, it's just gonna happen as these rise in temperature while they rest. Next, we're gonna move on to making our cheese sauce. It's super simple, and we can put it together right here on the side burner. So we're gonna start with 1 pint of heavy cream. That's gonna be the base for our sauce. We're gonna add a little bit of garlic here. So this is a teaspoon roughly of garlic that I've run through the microplane so it's broken down really fine, just kind of melts into the sauce. We also want to hit this with about a teaspoon of our trail dust, that same seasoning that we used on the lobster. So we're gonna bring this up to a simmer and then we'll start to work in our cheeses. So as soon as that comes up to a simmer, make sure you get it off that heat so that it doesn't overflow, because that'll happen quick on you. I've done it plenty of times in my life. We're gonna turn that heat down to low now and start to incorporate our cheeses. So the bulk of our cheese is going to be this sharp cheddar. We're just gonna sprinkle in about half of this. We're doing 8 ounces of cheddar. Just whisk that until it's dissolved, and then we'll add the rest. All right, so we'll do the next addition of cheese now. Again, we're just going to whisk until that's fully incorporated, and we'll move on to the next cheese. All right, so next we've got 4 ounces of American cheese, just for that ooziness, that creaminess when it melts. And our last addition, and this one's the kicker here, we're doing 4 ounces of smoked blue cheese. Now, this won't overpower the cheese sauce flavor, but you're gonna know it's there. It's got a great richness to it. And this is it. So we're just kind of regulating the heat to make sure that we can melt these cheeses all the way down. The sauce is just below a simmer. And once we don't have any more lumps, we're gonna be done. All right, we are there. I'm gonna turn the heat off. We'll take the cheese off as well. So before we go put all this together, we're gonna fire up the main cooking chamber of the Napoleon. I'm gonna start with 1/2, we're gonna go low heat. The other half, we're gonna go high heat. So essentially, we're creating kind of an indirect cooking zone where our skillet's gonna sit right here while the intense heat comes from over here. That way we don't char anything on the bottom of our mac and cheese while it's baking, but we also still get that intense heat coming over the top. So this will probably level out around 450 degrees. All right, we're ready to bring it all together, so let's dice up our lobster, get this mixed up and back into the cast iron skillet so we can bake a nice crust onto the top of this on the grill. So we're just gonna knock these down to kind of bite-sized pieces now. You can see that that lobster is fully cooked through, but hasn't dried out, so we got that just right. If you're looking for temperatures, about 135, 140 will be great. So we've got our noodles sitting here. We're gonna add our lobster to that, as well as our cheese sauce. You notice the cheese sauce is pretty loose, pretty runny, and that's a good thing because we're gonna be baking this and it's going to continue to set up as we bake it. So to make sure we get a really creamy mac and cheese in the end, you want the sauce to be fairly loose at this point in the process. So let's just get all of that coated. And then we're gonna go right back into that skillet. All right, so we'll spread this out so we get some nice surface area on the top. Man, that looks great. And now we're gonna mix up a little breadcrumb topping. So really simple here, we're gonna use panko breadcrumbs, 2 parts of that to 1 part Parmesan cheese, and then just a little bit more of that seasoning in there. So just sprinkle that right over the top. Try to get full coverage, hitting those edges. And that's it. All right, so we're gonna throw this on the low heat side of the Napoleon. So we're gonna have some of that heat coming from the bottom, but it's not gonna be intense at all. Most of that intense heat's coming over the top from the right side. Well, our lobster mac and cheese has been on for about 30 minutes now. It's looking great. I did give this a rotation about halfway through so we could get some even browning on both sides here. And you can see around the edges that cheese is just bubbling up. So we're ready to pull this off. All right, let's scoop into this. We got a great browning on the side from the cast iron. Love that. Oh yeah, still ooey gooey. But with some of that crunch on top. That's what we're going for. All right, well, let's dig in here. Get some of that lobster, some of that creamy stuff. Get some of that crunch on there as well. Yeah. That's just mac and cheese. Like, how can you go wrong? Super creamy. I'll tell you the one thing that doesn't stand out to me as I start to think through what flavors I'm experiencing, and it's the blue cheese. It does not overpower anything. It just adds this layer of like subtle funkiness. Couldn't we all use a little subtle funkiness? I love the lobster in there too. Great extra little flavor kick. A surprise in your mac and cheese. And look, to me, seafood and cheese doesn't necessarily go together. But oftentimes I'm proven wrong, and this is one of them. Fantastic. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out allthingsbbq.com for all the products featured in today's video. If you enjoy the recipe, hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to allthingsbbq.com/thesauce. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.